Welcome students of grade 8 and peace be upon you. Today we're going to talk about a reaction that would occur after the microbes cross the natural barrier and enter the body, which is called the inflammatory reaction.
At the end of this video, you will be able to A teacher and her students were studying in nature, but a thorn pricked the finger of a little student. Immediately, he felt pain. Soon, his finger started to swell and turned red, and it may even felt hot to the touch. What's going on inside his finger that's making all these things happen? It's called inflammation, and it's an important way that your body repairs damage and fights off infections. Microbes are everywhere around us, aiming to get in our body, and since there's an opening in our skin, the microbes would enter through the wound, which is an open part of the skin or injury, causing infection. But what's infection? When pathogens get into our body after a skin lesion, for example, they may start to multiply and invade or attack the body, causing infection and begin to damage cells. This is a figure showing the bacteria causing infection of specific cells, causing them to be damaged. Then now, please use the paragraph in order to define infection. Excellent. Then, what's infection? Infection is the invasion and multiplication of microbes in the body. But what do you mean by invasion and multiplication? Invasion is the entrance of microbes into the body, while multiplication is the increase in number of these microbes. As shown in this video, the microbes increase in number. After microbes cross the first line of defense or the natural barrier and are in the body as shown in this video, who will defend the body and how? When microbes enter, they start to infect cells. Infect means the entrance and multiplication of the microbes. These cells are named the infected cells. These infected cells release chemicals as shown in this figure, but what's the role of these chemicals? Like humans can communicate with each other by speaking, cells also can communicate with each other by chemicals they release. These chemicals trigger or activate a response that will destroy microbes. And this response is called inflammatory response or inflammatory reaction. Please now, let's define inflammatory response or inflammation. Please stop the video and write it on a draft paper. Great! Inflammation is the response of the immune system to a foreign object or invaders such as bacteria and viruses. Let's make a quick review. What's the first line of defense? Great! It's the natural barriers. Name the reaction that occurs after pathogens cross the natural barriers. Excellent! It's the inflammatory reaction or inflammation. Then, what line of defense would this reaction be? Great! It's the second line of defense. Then, let's indicate how inflammatory response is triggered or activated. The inflammatory response is triggered by chemicals released by infected cells as shown in this figure. These are the chemicals that are released by the cells that are infected by bacteria. Then now, may you please justify why the inflammatory response is considered as the second line of defense? Excellent, because it interferes after the first line of defense or the natural barriers fails to prevent the entry of pathogens. But which part of the immune system will start the defense? Organs or cells? And how will it accomplish its role? The first cell that's going to be involved in this reaction is monocyte, but this cell is going to undergo some changes. Monocyte circulates in the blood vessels, but after inflammation, it passes to the tissue and changes into macrophage. This change is called differentiation of monocytes, which is the process of becoming different by growth or development. Then, as a conclusion, we can say that monocytes present in the blood will have some changes and be bigger in size when leakage to the tissue to become macrophage. So please now pause the video and do a comparison between monocyte and macrophage according to their location, activation, and size. Excellent. Monocyte is present in blood, while macrophage is present in tissue. Monocyte is inactive, while macrophage is active against microbes. Monocyte is small, while macrophage is bigger than monocyte. But what happens during inflammatory action or inflammation? Is macrophage the only effector cell? Let's find out. In the inflammatory response, fluid and certain types of white blood cells, such as the monocyte that become macrophage and the granulocytes, go into action. Here we can see a blood capillary having white blood cells and red blood cells, next to a tissue having a pathogen. But how can these white blood cells reach the pathogen? Let's find out. Then, white blood cells leak from the blood capillary to the tissue in order to find the pathogen. Then, we can conclude that these cells, the monocytes and the granulocytes, leak from the blood vessels into nearly tissues to fight the pathogens. Then, let's indicate the cells of the inflammatory reaction. The following figure shows an inflammatory reaction after the entrance of pathogen. Please give the name of the white blood cells that are involved in the inflammatory reaction or effector cells. Excellent. They are granulocyte and monocyte. Granulocyte has multi-lobed nucleus, while monocyte has horseshoe-shaped nucleus. But what are the characteristics of these cells? Do they act the same against any pathogen? Let's find out. We know that pathogens are of different kinds, such as bacteria, virus, fungi, and protists. But the question is, would the inflammatory reaction way of defense change if the pathogen is changed? Let's watch a video showing the reaction of a macrophage against different types of pathogens labeled pathogen 1, pathogen 2, pathogen 3, and others. Is it the same or different? We can see that the macrophage acts exactly the same against all types of pathogens. Then, as a conclusion, the inflammatory response is the same no matter what the pathogen is. It's called the body's general defense. Then, the inflammatory response is non-specific. Please now underline the sentence that justifies this statement. Excellent. Then, we can notice that macrophage and granulocyte will attack any pathogen in the same way of defense, regardless of their shape, nature, or identity. As a summary, we can say that the natural barriers are the elements of the first line of defense, but the inflammatory reaction is the second line of defense, where the effector cells are monocyte and granulocyte, and it acts non-specifically. Then it's a non-specific immune response. It acts the same no matter what the pathogen is. The next time, we'll list the characteristics and the signs of the inflammatory reaction. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Study well and keep safe.